something happening here. But what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop.
Good evening and welcome to Occupy TV. This is a project by Occupy Eugene Media Group. It shows every Monday evening at 8 p.m. This is episode 8, titled Occupy Eugene, Now and Then. We are still here. Occupy Eugene is still occupying Eugene, Oregon. Many people think that because there is not a physical campsite, that the Occupy movement in Eugene has ended. However, that's not true at all, and Gwendolyn and I are here tonight to let you know what Occupy Eugene is doing and how you can plug into the movement. There's an estimate of 1,400 Occupies worldwide. In the U.S. alone, there are hundreds of physical sites. We're still here. We are the 99%. We're not going anywhere. Gwendolyn, let's start off talking a little bit about our involvement when we did have an actual site and how that involvement morphed since the eviction.
Okay, well, I guess my attachment to the physical site was very strong, considering that I was one of my roles from the beginning of Occupy was being a peacekeeper, de-escalating potentially violent situations on site. And it took me being there at the site on a very regular basis. And the amazing thing is how I felt about what I would be doing going into it and what it actually turned into. I felt that it was going to be more just keeping my own people calm and not getting too upset about opposition or police. And what it turned into was, because we offered a physical site where it was a relatively safe sleeping place, as well as there was a kitchen that served food, we had a lot of unhoused people. And with that came a lot of internal issues that could potentially turn violent. So it actually became more of like a security force, using rather than being authoritarian security. We're basing our tactics off de-escalation instead, which is a little bit different approach to security. So it was definitely a learning experience throughout the physical occupation. But because I was there so much and I had gotten such an attachment to the people that were occupying and the site itself, even though we moved sites several times, definitely the last site was the one with which I formed the strongest attachment, because we were there for, I believe, about 5 weeks. It was traumatizing to me when we lost it, and I felt very lost. The connection I had to the movement felt very lost in the weeks that followed, and changing over to working without a site and working out of the offices, the Occupy 5 at 7th and Polk, and I haven't actually spent much time at Growers Market, but we have an office there. I had to find a different role for myself, because that wasn't available anymore. It was no longer an issue. Though, I mean, the de-escalation still comes into play when dealing with people that walk in off the street looking for resources, because we've been a resource for the unhoused for some time now. So that's still something that we deal with on occasion. And with the unhoused comes other issues, social issues, such as substance dependence, mental illness. And so, I mean, my skills that I picked up at the physical occupation still come into play, but not nearly to the extent that they did at one point. So I find myself putting my energy into a lot of other places, like cleaning, organizing, trying to get the current site where we do a lot of our meetings, Occupy 5, up to a certain standard.
Yeah, I have to say that my initial involvement began when Tree Bresson offered a facilitation training for the community, and I went to her training and then became involved in the facilitation committee and helped facilitate the General Assemblies, and that was what Washington Jefferson Park was the fourth or fifth location that Occupy Eugene had moved to. And I had gone to each location and checked it out. I've always been an activist myself, but I was waiting for some sort of permanency to the occupation before I really totally dove in and got involved. And what I noticed at Washington Jefferson Park was that really a very solid sense of community formed among a whole diverse group of people. You had all sorts of people down there from very different backgrounds, different socioeconomic statuses, housed, unhoused, just people who would never, under their normal circumstances, ever talk to one another. They created this sense of community, and that was really powerful to me and to, I think, all the people down there. And then since the eviction, I feel like that has just fragmented our community. And now that we have moved into our two offices, Occupy 5 and the Growers Occupy office, it seems like we're reforming and creating a different kind of community. And now I find myself not just going down to a physical site and facilitating General Assemblies, but plugging in to many different committees that we have. And I kind of almost feel like we have a little bit more energy to be proactive in actions now that there isn't a physical site, although that's definitely a very powerful and symbolic thing. You know, tents have become a symbol now. When we see a tent, it means something very profound.
Absolutely. I feel like despite the grave disappointment that I felt and many others felt, especially people that had nowhere else to go, and that this was, for many people, the first time in years, and for some people in their lives, where they'd felt that sense of community. There's also there are some ups to it, though I don't agree with the site closure at all, and I really do wish that we'd been able to keep our site. I found that I do have a lot to offer the movement in other ways that I never even realized that I had before when I was spending my time keeping the peace down at the site. Some of the situations that I had to deal with at the site, I look back at, and even though they were very stressful, I have to laugh, and I have to embrace the fact that, like, now I have that time and that energy to put into other areas. Even though, I mean, the experience was absolutely indispensable in my mind. I'm definitely not the same person I was before the beginning of the occupation.
Definitely, absolutely. And, the whole sense of community down there was just so powerful. Everybody had a voice. People who didn't have a voice before, who lived on the street, who people would walk by or drive by daily while they're panhandling on the corner. They had a voice in this movement, and they plugged in. They had jobs. I feel like people were empowered when before they weren't as empowered. And I think one of the challenges of Occupy Eugene today is how do we bring back our community that's been fragmented since the eviction? Gwendolyn, can you tell the folks a little bit about Occupy 5 down on 7th and Polk?
Yeah, well, it's a large warehouse space that one of our members of Occupy Eugene, Helen, owns, and she's graciously donated it to us for the next several months. to work out of. We have our meetings there for committee meetings. We have our general assemblies, and we have this vision. We have a working group that got together to create a site plan and to follow through on the site plan. And we have this vision of the front area. It's like got those big windows where you can walk by and see in, and the front lobby area of it being like an information center, so that anybody who has any questions, who wants to know more about Occupy Eugene, can walk in and get all the information they need. We have a children's area for parents who want to be able to bring their kids down and have their kids have something to do while they're in a meeting or working on a project there. We have the library. We're working on filling the space full of information about our movement, about all different kinds of activism that as actually can be under the umbrella of the Occupy movement, which is really kind of an all-encompassing movement, including all sorts of other types of activism. And it's a lot of work. There was a lot of cleaning. We rescued all of that stuff from the site to keep it from getting just thrown in the dumpsters like we saw happen across the nation in all these other site closures. And so we rescued all this stuff and we brought it in, and we had to go through it all and decide what was really worth keeping, what we had to get rid of. We donated a lot of clothing. We'd accumulated so much that the community had donated to us. And we're getting really close to having it cleared out down there. The other big hurdle that we have to jump over is getting the staff to be in there. We want to have at least 3 people on duty in order to have that open lobby space open for the public to come in and get the information, plug in, get on committees. So it's like, and back to the fragmenting of the community, that's one thing that I feel has set us back, because when we were on site, we had so many people doing so many things, and now we're kind of dispersed. A lot of them have left town to go to other occupations, or they don't know where to find us. They don't, feel that same sense of community. So we've lost a lot of people, and that could potentially fill in these gaps that we're finding in trying to staff the building fully, so that we can have this information center. But it is coming along. We've got a skeleton schedule right now, and we're working to fill it in so that we can really start doing some serious activism out of that location.
Yeah, that's a huge location. Mm-hmm. There's probably 2 or 3 meetings that happen in there just about every day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great place. We've been blessed by so many donations from our community. People really care about this movement, and donating a whole huge building is amazing. We've also got the Growers Occupy office in the historic Growers building, and for those of you who don't know what the Growers building is, it's at 454 Willamette. There's a food co-op downstairs, and upstairs are offices to a whole bunch of different progressive, socially active not-for-profits. And Occupy Eugene was fortunate enough to rent an office up there, and 3 months worth of rent was donated from a community member who really wanted to support the movement. So I think we're pretty lucky, and I think we're pretty unique. A lot of Occupies have been evicted and haven't yet established indoor meeting places to organize. So I think we're really lucky that way. If people are interested in donating, we are looking for some more desktop computers, some laptop computers, and a projector or 2 that we could use in our organizing efforts. And we do have a website. If you haven't checked out our website yet, please go to occupyeugenemedia.org, and you can find a whole bunch of information about us, where our indoor locations are, information about events. We have a Google Calendar of meetings. We are definitely very active still. Occupy Eugene has not gone away. So I'm wondering, maybe we should talk a little bit about some of the committees so we can let folks know how we're organizing and what we're doing.
Absolutely, because we have a number of committees that are still very active, even with site closure. Number one, actions committees have grown. The meetings have grown, and there's a lot more people interested in having their voice heard in what kind of actions we're going to take next. Though we have had a little bit of stagnation since site closure, which is completely natural considering the disbursement throughout town. We're rebuilding with the actions, and we're looking at some upcoming events. We had a few events recently, and I think that it is definitely now a major focus now that we don't have so much to do with upkeep of the site. We can really put our attention on what kind of actions we're going to be planning, actions that we've already planned and just want to get down. And yeah, it's definitely one of the major focuses now.
Direct action.
Direct action. And then we've got Allies Committee that still meet. It's kind of hard to explain what they do. They kind of give voice to people that have traditionally been marginalized and have a hard time finding their own voice in our horizontal power structure.
Yeah, a lot of the people involved in the Allies Committee are people who are a little more privileged than the majority of people who are displaced and are very interested and supportive of the movement, but might feel slightly uncomfortable to get as involved as some of the occupiers have been at the physical site. There's thousands of people in Eugene who care about this movement and want change, but we all do have different levels of comfort, you know, how involved are we going to be? So Allies is a really great committee to get involved with. If you don't necessarily want to go protest, but you do want to be supportive, that's a good one to join.
Absolutely. And then our collective visioning committee has existed since before our physical occupation actually even began. And they're a group of people that are working on basically collecting all the information and creating a unified statement to the world about what our goals are. And they've come up with some pretty good stuff so far. And they're continuing to write amazing things. Coordination committee is more of just like all the committee's spokespeople together when get together and kind of do like a spokes council type organizing committee once a week. We'd have meetings.
Yeah, Occupy Eugene is really so huge. We have 20-something committees that it's really nice to have this coordination committee. That way all our committees can communicate together and they can all know what's going on. And then we're also trying to do that in all of Oregon. We have all these occupies in Oregon. So just like our coordination committee, we're trying to coordinate all the occupies in Oregon, and then ideally, every state would coordinate together, and so we can just all be a stronger force.
Like a web.
In this movement, like a web.
And then communications, which, wow, like, I have to say that communications is one of the committees that I have, like, a whole lot of respect for because they do a lot of work. They do our press releases. The media group is like a subcommittee within communications. They put they get photographs in the weekly for us. They write articles. They basically they're like our face, the face of Occupy Eugene. And with the loss of the site, we lost engineering. Good old engineering.
Yeah, but who knows? We might need them again if we reoccupy.
We might need them again if we reoccupy, for sure. Well, you're a facilitator.
I am, yeah. Facilitation is another committee. For folks that don't know, the Occupy movement does operate on a consensus-based process, and that does give everybody a voice. And so the facilitation committee needs to get together and help organize our general assemblies. Right now we're meeting Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and Saturdays at 4 p.m. So anybody can come join us, come see what Occupy Eugene is about, join the conversation. You too have a voice. If you're part of the 99%, that's a great place to go and talk to us. And that our general assemblies are down at the Occupy 5 site on 7th and Polk. And so with facilitation, agenda setting, steering discourse, and helping the group make the best decisions. That's been a really fun experience.
Yeah. And then we have our finance committee, and more recently the fundraising committee, as like in the last couple of weeks of Washington Jefferson, they got together and they work pretty closely. Finance, of course, takes care of our funds, and fundraising attempts to bring more in. Then we have food or kitchen committee, which was a huge part of our physical occupation, but it's kind of like backed off since we've lost the physical occupation site. And I know Big John still comes to events, feeds us. And sometimes with the bigger meetings, there'll be snacks, dinner there for us. But it's definitely not as much of a focus as it was back at the physical occupation site when it was feeding 800 to 1,000 people a day, 3 meals a day.
Incredible, yeah. Those people are still hungry, though,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the things we're working on at the Occupy 5 site is creating a resource manual so that when people come to us with needs, even though we're not able to meet their needs specifically at that site, we can at least steer them in the right direction. And speaking of that, we've got the Homeless Solutions Committee, which some of those members are actually on the mayor's task force, Homeless Solutions Task Force. So we're still working in the city, with the city in some ways, to try to tackle the problem that for a while became like the forefront of our local movement because of the physical occupation. But yeah, they're meeting regularly and coming up with some good stuff to help tackle. Like Eugene has one of the the largest percentage of unhoused people in the state, from what I understand, per capita.
Wow.
And
then there's the library committee.
Yeah.
The library committee, we have a library set up in Occupy 5, and people are welcome to come in and educate themselves, read a book. And the library committee's been sponsoring some readings at local bookstores. We just had one at Tsunami Books the other weekend, and they are starting to have regular book groups. So reading some political stuff and discussing it, that should be pretty fun.
Yeah, that sounds really great. I want to get on that, actually. There's a book club right now for Rules for Radicals.
Yep, Tuesday.
I need to pick up my copy. Medical is still active, not nearly as much as they were during our physical occupation, but they're still doing medical clinics. Do you have the days and times?
Yeah, the medical clinics are Mondays, noon to 2, Tuesdays, 5 to 7, and Thursdays, 5 to 7. And, I mean, what a resource. We've got skilled professionals there willing and ready to help anyone with free medical service.
And they talked about moving it towards the center of town possibly, too, to be a little bit more accessible for unhoused individuals that make that their hub.
Yeah, there's discussion about organizing that to reach more people. Yeah. What else do we have? We have a mental health working group that David Oakes from Mind Freedom is organizing. I know he's going to be, I think, in Philly, occupying the mental health industry. We have our Occupy Media Group, who are super busy putting together so many different things, including this television show. We are making our own media. We live stream events. We're coming out with a zine. We cannot rely on mainstream media. They have disappointed us. They have not reported events. They have not reported events accurately. And so Occupies are establishing their own media groups. And, we're reporting the news.
It's absolutely vital. The mainstream media is basically bought and sold.
They're owned by big corporations.
Yeah, they're absolutely owned by the people that do not want us to succeed.
What else do we have?
We've got morale. They try to keep our spirits up.
Yes, and we need it.
We definitely need it.
Yeah, so, for those of you watching at home, if you are an artist and would love to come to one of our GAs and share a song or some music or a poem, or you have an act, something to lift our spirits, if that is your call, please contact us. We'd love to have you.
Or just show up.
Just show up. Yeah, definitely. One of our newest working groups is the Nonviolence Working Group. And the whole concept of nonviolence is really central to the Occupy movement. In our visioning statement, it opens up with a declaration of nonviolence, and I'd like to read it right now. This visioning statement was a collective statement that Occupy Eugene drafted, and it was consented on by the General Assembly on December 6th, 2011, when we were still at Washington Jefferson Park. And it reads, "We are a nonviolent, nonpartisan, social political movement for accountability and responsibility in government. We stand in solidarity with Occupy movements around the globe and all people who will no longer sit back and watch corporate and special interests run their government and spoil the living earth. We are a nonviolent movement." And there's been lots of conversation about what is violence and what is nonviolence. Gandhi historically has been a huge advocate of nonviolence, and so we pull on some of his teachings. But we've also embraced the St. Paul principles, which speaks to nonviolence.
It speaks to the diversity of ideas that this umbrella of a movement we have, covers a lot of different people, a lot of people's issues, and a lot of people's ideas. They were written in 2008 when there was a lot of different political movements happening, but a lot of the occupations across the U.S. have adopted them, and we have too. The St. Paul's principles read, 1, our solidarity will be based on respect for a diversity of tactics and the plans of other groups. 2, the actions and tactics used will be organized to maintain a separation of time or space. 3, any debates or criticisms will stay internal to the movement, avoiding any public or media denunciations of fellow activists and events. 4, we oppose any state repression of dissent, including surveillance, infiltration, disruption, and violence. We agree not to assist law enforcement actions against activists and others. So I think both of these things have played a part in the need for the nonviolent working group and bringing these principles back to be a central focus.
Absolutely, yeah, and this working group is just getting bigger and bigger every time I walk into the growers building and see them meeting. They have to keep pulling more chairs into the meeting space. I know they're working on bringing some speakers in to give compassionate communication trainings, to give nonviolent training workshops, planning events around the whole nonviolence concept. It's something that will be a deciding factor for someone getting very involved in the movement. So I would encourage anybody who wants to learn more about nonviolence and ways that they can participate in the movement that way to attend one of the working group meetings. They've got a lot of really interesting discussion.
Absolutely. One of the committees that is especially helpful to the community at large, people outside of the Occupy movement, as in what the needs are right now, is the Neighborhood Actions Committee that focus on foreclosures. And because of the economic crisis that we're still in the middle of, and there's been so many foreclosures, and a lot of them are wrong. They're
illegal.
They're illegal. They've found loopholes to jump through, and so we got a Neighborhoods Actions Committee that is working on helping people keep their homes.
Yes.
Which is really an amazing thing that we're actually making a tangible difference right now in our community.
Yeah. And then there's outreach, the outreach committee. There are, like I said earlier, there's so many people who support the movement, but now that there's not a physical site, they can't just walk down to the site and go to the info booth and say, hey, I want to help out. So the outreach committee is there to help plug in people who want to get involved. So people can go to the website, and there's a contact person, email and phone number for each committee, and if folks want to get involved, they can contact the outreach contact, and we'll help plug them in. What are you interested in doing? How do you want to help out? That's kind of the focus of the outreach committee, and there's so many events going on that we are tabling. And there's so many wonderful nonprofits in this town, and they're hosting events, and we're working in solidarity with them. And so Occupy Eugene is having tables at all these events now. There's a big need for outreach. We need to let people know what's going on.
It's vital now that our site is down, especially since we don't have Occupy 5 up yet. We don't have that information center working yet. It's something we're working towards, but it's not. It's not currently able to be used as a resource for information. So outreach is very important right now.
Yeah. We've got a People of Color working group as well. We strive for diversity in so many different things, and we're trying to reach out to people of color to help get more involved. And so if that's someone's area of interest, I would encourage them to go to the website and plug in, contact the committee contact. And especially right now with what's going on in Arizona with the censoring of ethnic studies in the school districts, in the banning of books that specifically discuss perspectives from people of color. This is a huge area that we need to start organizing around. Universities are starting to cut their ethnic studies departments. They're not departments anymore. They're simply programs. So we are hoping that some more people of color will come and join the movement and help speak up against these horrible censoring, and just makes me upset.
Absolutely. It's definitely a national issue.
For sure.
As well as a local one. And then we've got research and legal, and I feel like they were very involved in when we had the physical occupations going, researching sites, deciding, legal was, constantly referring to legal on what we could get away with and what we could potentially be running into in certain circumstances. And then also still very active with legal observers during actions, making sure that the police are behaving, basically.
The Know Your Rights training?
They do the Know Your
That's
Rights
huge.
training. They do the Legal Observers training. I mean, and really anybody can come to these trainings for any reason. The Know Your Rights is really across the board. Every citizen should have these trainings, whether they're part of a social movement or not,
Absolutely.
as well as legal observing. I have a funny little story about the night before eviction. We saw a bus getting pulled over, and a bunch of legal observers, myself included, ran over to like observe the police pulling this bus over. And we looked at each other and we're like, this is how it should be every time. I mean, if you look around the nation and see the things that police have gotten away with recently with, you know, whether it's just not following through properly or, you know, police violence, we need people to be aware of what is legal for them to be doing and what
Absolutely.
isn't, and make sure that every citizen has every citizen's interaction with the police is watched by other citizens, because they're there to serve us. And whereas many of them get into the job for the right reasons, and many of them are really good-hearted people, there are those that completely abuse their power. And every citizen should have the training
Absolutely.
that goes into that.
The police officers know their rights and our rights, but your average citizen probably doesn't know their rights. I didn't know my rights until the Occupy movement. That's one of the many things I learned being involved. I actually know my rights now, and everyone should.
Absolutely, as well as what is proper police conduct on both sides of the fence. It's really important for everybody to know those things. And I'm sure that there's committees that we're not mentioning here, but
we've got a zillion.
We have so many, but those are some of the ones that are definitely still active.
Yeah, and so for the viewers out there, if any of these committees sound interesting to you, you can go to our website, occupyeugenemedia.org, and pull down a list of our committees and their contacts. And then you can look over to the right, and you'll see our calendar of events. It's a Google Calendar, so you can export it to your own calendar. And every committee has their meeting dates and times and locations up there. So I hope after people learn about all our committees, they'd go and attend a meeting and see if that might be a good fit for them. Well, we've done a lot of events. We have a lot of accomplishments as an Occupy movement here in Eugene. We have events coming up, and we have regular standing events. Why don't we share some of the things we've done?
Some of our accomplishments, I mean, and I think one of the biggest is the fact that we had a 2,000 plus people march on October 15th in solidarity with the global Occupy movement. We have about 3,000 people in our Facebook group. Before our physical occupation, we had weekly protests at the Bank of America that were sometimes had 200-300 people at them each week. I was part of I was one of the 17 people arrested on November 17th. Shut down the banks. We shut down 5 major banks that day. All of those banks had basically stolen taxpayer money and put it in their own pocket. All of them involved in illegal foreclosure practices. We shut down 5 banks that day for hours. Then we've done the Children's March. We probably had 75 kids that day marching on the Children's March. We met with the mayor and talked to her for a little bit. We had a protest at the U of O before our move to Mill Race. We occupied the quad for a day. We built up to serving 800 to 1,000 meals a day during our physical occupation. Bank transfer day, the same day that I was arrested along with 16 others, there was thousands of dollars local dollars move from big banks to credit unions. During feeding and helping unhoused citizens during the physical occupations. We inspired City Council to allocate more funds to help the underprivileged, inspired City Council to give additional extensions, inspired conversation about the issues. Local radio stations are wanting to participate in conversations, and now we're helping with the Homeless Task Force. And we occupied for 76 days, which was one of the longer occupations in the country, I believe.
It was. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've done lots, and we're going to do lots more.
We're not done.
Absolutely not. Just the beginning, actually.
So we do have a few events already on the calendar. On January 28th, there's going to be a William Stafford celebration, and he is a social justice poet. He will be there will be a celebration of his poetry at the Occupy 5 location at Polk and 7th. And the celebration is titled Speaking Truth to Power, the Poetry of William Stafford and the Occupy Movement. And people are encouraged to attend and bring a poem of his that they'd like to read, or bring an original piece of poetry. And that's on January 28th from 4 to 6 p.m. On February the 1st, Calc is co-sponsoring a free Bradley Manning event. And that is Bradley Manning, as in Army Private Bradley Manning, who is facing a life sentence in prison for simply providing U.S. citizens with the truth. Through WikiLeaks, he was successful in leaking out some U.S. government files, exposing the truth that our U.S. government is up to. So on February 1st at 7:30 p.m. at the First United Methodist Church at 1376 Olive Street, there will be an informative discussion about Bradley Manning, and he's still in prison.
And will be if we don't raise awareness about this issue. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Some of the things these giant corporations and the CEOs of get away with, while people that are simply providing the U.S. people with information that we have a right to know. We have a right to know what our tax dollars are really being used for and why we're at war. And the fact that they're punished with possible lifetime sentences, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. It's travesty. And I mean, in all the lies that our government tells us and hides and covers up, and all the money that they spend on wars when we can't even properly fund public education or feed our citizens or provide children with health care. It's really disheartening.
Absolutely.
So thank you to people like Bradley Manning who are exposing the truth of our government.
He's a real hero for sure.
For sure. If you're not in town on February 1st and can't go to the free Bradley Manning event, up in Salem there is an Occupy the Legislature event, and that starts at 10 a.m. It's being sponsored by Occupy Portland, and they're calling out to all the Occupies in Oregon to meet up at the Capitol in Salem starting at 10 a.m. There will be a huge rally, lots of actions, and then afterwards there will be a statewide General Assembly. So that should be interesting.
I'm definitely going to make it. I didn't make Salem yesterday, but I'm definitely going to make that one. I really want to see what it's like to be a part of a General Assembly that big.
Yeah, and one huge issue that many people are passionate about is getting money out of politics, and so that's going to be a huge issue of discussion that day, and hopefully that message will get out to the legislature, try to make some action to get that money out of politics.
Absolutely.
And February 29th, There is another event, shut down.
Portland, I believe it was Portland that put the call out to shut down these corporations. There's been talk about Eugene doing action in solidarity with that. I know that it's happening in other places. We'll definitely make the information available to the public as soon as we know what, when, and where.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that'll be up on our calendar as soon as we have some more details about that. March 15th, up in Portland, there's going to be another gathering of the Oregon Occupies. Occupy Portland is going to sponsor an Occupy Oregon conference, and it's to be a 4-day event. And so that'll be really interesting to get all these activists together and see how we can collaborate and organize as a state and try to make some, not just local, but statewide change, and ideally national change as well as a next step. That's March 15th.
Yeah, I've noticed there's a lot more of the inter-Occupy, I guess I'll call them, events happening. And it kind of feels like we're just getting off the ground with that, and we've been very much focused on our own movements, and now there's been a lot more outreach to connect with other occupations, and it's really exciting because that's where our power will really come into play, is when we're interconnected so much so that we're having these meetings regularly, and we have that open line of communication, which is one of the things that the media group is helping to facilitate, which is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, with the physical site, it seems as if we were so focused on local issues, pressing things down at the site, and now that we have more time to get involved in other areas, we actually are catching our breath and we're learning what other occupies are doing. I don't know about you, but when the site was there, I was so focused on the site that I didn't even know what was going on nationally or globally, for that matter. And now I'm able to read up on alternative media because the mainstream media is not covering it, and learning what everyone else is doing. So now is an opportunity for us all to collaborate. It's really interesting, and it's through shows like this that the general public will learn what all the occupies are doing.
Absolutely.
So there are a few other standing events. We talked about the free medic clinic, which is such a valuable resource. There is also every Sunday an Understanding the Constitution class.
Which is, I've been to that, and that's really, it's phenomenal how much I've learned about a document I should have known more about to begin with. But
yeah,
it's definitely a good one. I would encourage the public to participate in that.
For sure. Yeah, a professor from the University of Oregon has volunteered his time, knowledge, and expertise to come and teach us about the Constitution. It's every Sunday from noon to 3, and that is at the Growers Building at 454 Willamette. And the professor even gives everyone a little copy of the Constitution, and we discuss it, and we try to understand it, the complex document that it is, and the many ways it can be interpreted. The Last Friday Artwork is a fun thing that's happening the last Friday of every month. Including this month, and that's happening at Occupy 5 on 7th and Polk, and that will be a great forum for occupiers to share their work. We have so many artists, especially in this town, photographers, painters, musicians, and the media group is helping facilitate these artists. And the Last Friday Art Walk is a great opportunity to come see some of that showcase art. Guaranteed to have some political aspects to it, I'm sure. And we talked about many of our committees, so I would definitely encourage people to check out the calendar online and see what fits with their schedule, what fits with their interest, and come to a meeting or two to see if that might be a good place for them to plug in. And our General Assemblies, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and Saturdays at 4 p.m. down at Occupy 5. We've got, the internet has really been a huge resource for the Occupy movement. And so I'd like to share some of our resources online. I've mentioned the website, occupyeugenemedia.org. And if you're not on the internet and just want to make a good old-fashioned phone call, you can call 541-525-0130, and that will connect you with a live human being, and you can ask them questions.
I think it's
Allie. It might be Allie. We do have a Facebook page. And actually several. The media group has created independent Facebook pages aside from the main Occupy Eugene one. So we have Facebook pages that solely showcase photographs, videos, documentaries, podcasts. Facebook has really been a huge, dare I say, asset to the movement. Then we have...
One thing I'd say about Facebook is a tool.
It is a tool.
And what my father always taught me about tools is if you don't use it right, either you or someone else is going to be hurt. So it's definitely a networking device to be used correctly.
And social media has been so huge in this movement, as in others around the world. In a second you could put out information. In a second you can upload a video, and it's all these social outlets combined that's really creating our alternative media. So it is a tool. Don't drop the hammer on your toe. But
or somebody else's.
Or somebody else's. But there's definitely resources out there. It's not the movement itself.
No,
but
it's not.
But it is a way to get information out, for sure. We do have a Twitter account. Occupy Eugene is on Twitter. And if you go to YouTube, you can search Occupy Eugene, and there are documentaries and interviews going up daily about Occupy Eugene and other Occupies, really around the world. It's a global movement. In case people want to stop by, our main location now is at 1274 West 7th, Occupy 5. We have a smaller office, which is really kind of like a quiet workspace, but it's housed upstairs in the historic Growers Building, 454 Willamette. But definitely, I hope people go to our website, because there's so much information. That's where we kind of funnel it all. So we have a few minutes left in this show. Gwendolyn, I'm wondering, would you be interested in sharing your thoughts? We talked about how Occupy Eugene existed as a site and how it morphed to a different type of involvement after the eviction. What do you think the future has in store for the movement?
Well, I feel like after the loss of the site and the loss of a lot of the people that were involved when we had the site, that we have nowhere to go but up, because we're not going away. So I think that we're slowly but surely regaining support from the community. We're looking at getting more involved in actions, having more actions more often, bigger actions. Gosh, I would really love to see another march like that first march on October 15th when we occupied the park blocks and we had, they say 2,000, but I'm convinced that it was far more than 2,000 people. It would be really awesome to see us reach those numbers again. And right now we have so much more time and energy to put into organizing and really becoming unified in our goals. I, for a while, was at a loss for what to do with my time because I spent so much time down on the site, and now I've gotten involved with communications committee. I'm on the caretakers committee trying to get Occupy 5 up and running as an information center. I've explored a couple of the other communities. I'm thinking about facilitation. I gotta watch how many committees I get involved in because I also have work in school. But I'm kind of actually excited to have this time and available to me to get more involved, and perhaps by the time we reoccupy, we'll be a lot more organized.
I bet we will be. Speaking of big marches, I do know that there is a huge march in the planning fashioned after a locally famous photograph of an occupier, and his name was Billy. And the photograph is of him sitting in a field of grass with a sign, and it simply said, "My name is Billy." And so there's some organizing around a march where people just are, this is who the 99%, this is the 99%. We're not faceless protesters, we're individuals with our own individual narratives. My name is Jennefer. So that should be a really interesting and powerful march,
I think that's fabulous. I mean, I think that one of the things our society has forgotten is that the people matter. They've given corporations, well, I guess corporations have technically been people since the 1800s, but they've given corporations the same rights as people. And we have, in the big picture, become faceless. We're just social security numbers, and we do matter, and our humanity matters, and our individuality matters. And I think that that's a fabulous idea for a march. It's a very simple statement, and there's probably going to be a lot of people out there that don't get it, but they'll get it eventually.
Well, the whole Occupy movement is a movement of the people, and when people understand that it's humanity that we are really supporting, then that's when I think we'll find the power to put more power into the people and not focus it so much on corporations. Thanks for joining us.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that?